Do you even like poetry? Are you a teacher that assigns poetry without really setting a student up for success? In this video, I'm going to give you a strategy that will help you move past that. My goal here is that during this video, you'll be able to understand the whole reason we read poetry in the first place. You'll use that strategy the next time you come across a poem that you don't like or that you don't understand. Or if you're a teacher, you'll try and employ this strategy for students so that they have a better time. They enjoy the experience of reading poetry. My name's Nathan, and this is The Natural Classroom. Let's get to it. There are two specific problems that students encounter when they approach poetry. Number one, probably the most common, this was the approach that happened to me when I was young, is I would hear the word poetry, I would get anxious, kind of afraid that I was going to get it wrong. Most of the time, I wouldn't even try, or I'd let somebody else figure it out, and then I would just kind of nod my head. That's a very common approach for some reason, and I'm not sure why this is. I can't put my finger on it, but I certainly saw that a lot as a teacher. I would see students struggle with the idea of trying to look at a poem and understand a poem. But the second problem, maybe we don't think about this particular student as often, in that compliance model of education where students are expected to do what you tell them, students will approach poetry with the intent of trying to figure it out right from the beginning. And so as soon as they're given the assignment to read a poem, they are analyzing it, they're trying to pick it apart, they're trying to figure out why the author's saying things, because they're trying to do a good job and they're trying to impress the teacher. So both of those scenarios are major hurdles, and both of them will stop a student from being able to learn. So I want to suggest my method of approaching poetry in just really simple couple of steps that you can do that will help you avoid having that problem, or at least help teach students to avoid that. I do want to say this about poetry, and this is probably coming up in a future video. Reading poetry is like exercising a muscle. If you don't do it very often, that's probably where those roadblocks come in. It feels like you either have to jump on it and try and figure it out, or it becomes too much. It's too much to handle, so you shy away. Practicing this over time will help you to appreciate it more, and it'll make it come into view. I've used this analogy many times, and it's the idea of a magic eye poster. If you've ever seen those magic eye posters.
Yeah, it's 3D art. Computers generate them. Big computers.
It's a great analogy. If you stare at an image, and I'll put one on the screen right now so you can see it. Maybe you need to pause it, but if you stare at that image for long enough, you'll start to see things come into view, 3D images.
Well, you blur your eyes like you're staring straight through the picture, and you keep your eyes unfocused.
But it takes a while, and if you've never done it before, it feels very hard to do, and a lot of people give up because they can't see the image, and so they stop trying.
Where is it?
Right here.
I'm looking there.
No, unfocused.
I am unfocused.
There's a method that I want to employ that'll help you get past that. First of all, obviously patience is a big part of this. But let's just start with the first read of a poem. You should never do the first read of a poem with the intention of trying to figure out all the meanings. Do the first read always with the intention of just listen, not try to understand it, just listen. Don't point anything out, just enjoy the experience. There's an old saying that it was a much older time, back in the 1700s and early 1800s, and it was et dulce et utile, which means to delight and to instruct. That was sort of the theme of most literature and poetry, that it needed to both delight your soul and instruct you somehow. Now, it's an old bygone time that a lot has changed since then. But I would say, as far as poetry goes, it needs to somehow be delightful to you. It has to entertain you. And when you skip over that and you just go for, well, what am I supposed to learn from it? You end up missing a big part of it. So the first time you listen to a poem or read it yourself, do it just because. Don't do it for any other reason other than I just want to hear this poem. The second time you listen to a poem, you're going to start to notice things. And I would say for the second round, rather than look and try and figure out certain parts of the poem, this next time you're going to let things appear. What do you notice the second time? You weren't looking the first time. You weren't looking to notice anything the first time. You were just listening. The second time, what do you notice? And it can be very simple what you're noticing. Maybe it's, oh, this word is really awkward. I don't understand that word. Or maybe it's, I really like the sound of that repetition. I like that sound. You don't need to name it. You don't need to come up, oh, that's an alliteration. Oh, that's lovely. Or, oh, I can't understand that part. You don't have to go into what you like or don't like and then start rating the poem. Stay away from that, but just notice things. So round 1, just listen. Round 2, what do you notice? Once you get to round 3, then you're ready to start picking this apart. If you skip to round 3, where you're picking the poem apart right from the beginning, you will miss so much of the experience. At a minimum, you need to have read this poem 3 times, and one of the 3 times needs to be you out loud. So you saying the words out loud. There's something about saying the words out loud that allows your brain to own those words, and it becomes a part of your vocabulary. If you watch my regular series on Wednesdays where I introduce vocabulary, that's the whole point of doing vocabulary words, that you become familiar with them. And now on the Thursdays, you're going to experience that for yourself. So I've left a free copy in the description here of a poem called Dulce et Decorum Est. Okay, it's a poem by Wilfred Owen. I'm not going to say anything about this poem, but I want you to practice what I'm saying here. So you're going to read this poem. I'm going to leave a link in the description of another person reading the poem as well, and you can listen to that. There's even a link to a animated version of this. After reading it out loud, after listening to someone else do this, okay, then you're going to go to your third step, and then you're going to start picking it apart, trying to figure out what it means. But don't try and figure it out the first time you listen to it, just listen to it. If you're interested in teaching this particular poem, I also have for sale a lesson plan for those who are instructors or who do this regularly. There's a lesson plan that you can purchase through my Patreon. Go ahead and check that out. That's all I got for today. Thanks everybody for joining me for Thoughtful Thursday, and I'll see you next Thursday.